ladies and gentlemen, please give a big hand to Alex Pearlman!
Hello, Undergorund Arts. How are we doing this evening? I used to do comedy here back in 2017. It was great. Everyone was on drugs. Now I show up and everyone's like, I have a card now. Fuck you! We used to buy drugs from a guy. Now you want me to pay taxes for my drugs? And what are the taxes going to? Elon? I just want to acknowledge something real quick. I want to acknowledge something. The last 4 years have been rough. It's been crazy, right? And I just want to acknowledge what we've all lived through. We've lived through a pandemic. We lived through an insurrection. We lived through inflation. We lived through JoJo Siwa's rebrand. We've been through a lot. And it was so much. But the good news is, we're doing it all again. And feels good, right? Fucking Groundhog Day country, baby! We'll keep doing this until you find love. Maybe you'll learn piano. It's been a wild few years. For me, in particular. Just the other day, Hunter Biden told me I was his favorite content creator. That caught me off guard to a degree that you guys have no idea. First thing, I was at the White House. I was in the White House, and I'm like, they're gonna kill me. I'm looking around, I'm like, they should shoot me, right? They should shoot me. And they're like, that's next month. I was like, cool. And then they're like, Hunter Biden's here. I'm like, I'm gonna get a picture with Hunter Biden. As a joke. I was like, this is very funny. It's Hunter Biden. My dad used to work in Wilmington. This is hilarious. He's the only man in the history of this nation to get a decade-long pardon. They just said all of it. It's not even specific. It says from December 4th, 2014 until midnight on December 4th, 2024. And they released that on December 3rd. He had 24 hours left to live. So I'm like, this is great. I run in the other room. I'm like walking up. I'm like, there's Hunter Biden. I pull out my phone. I'm like, we're doing this shit. This is amazing. And I walk up and there's other people are getting pictures with them. And one guy's like, I need someone to take a picture. I'm like, I'll take a picture for you. I'm just being nice. It's really my way to sneak to the front of the line. Like, I'll take a picture. And the guy standing there, Hunter Biden's going, I don't know. The guy, he looks at him, he goes, I don't know who the fuck you are, dude. He goes, you should stick out more like this guy. Like, that guy's got to look. And he points at me. And I'm thinking, Hunter Biden's making a ginger joke. That's funny. And I'm like, haha, click, click. Hand the guy his phone. I said, my turn. And then Hunter Biden goes, no, listen, I'm being for real. And I paused, and I look at him, and was like, is that the difference between your generation? Your dad's like, no, listen. Gotta be honest with you. And I was like, no, listen, I'm being for real. I watch all your stuff. And I said, all of my stuff? And he's like, yeah. When my dad dropped out and you said that I should be pardoned, that shit was so funny. And you know how I got there? I quit smoking. That's how the fuck I got there. So I'm looking at Hunter Biden, who's famous for smoking, and it's me. The fuck? There was a moment, I'm just standing there staring at it, I just kept thinking back to like why I quit smoking. There were so many different reasons. Number one reason is as the TikTok stuff was taken off, before the government decided to silence all of us. Feels weird, right? Only thing they can agree on? They're like, oh, we don't want AOC in power and fuck kid dancing apps. Like, that's what they agree on. But there was, TikTok started taking off. I'm like, I guess I should do stand-up again. I did stand-up, and after a show, I couldn't talk. I was silenced. I sounded like RFK. It was terrible. That was the first thing. Second thing is one day my wife and I were making love, and I wheezed during sex. I wheezed, and it was crazy because I wasn't even doing anything. I was on the bottom. Like, You guys know this move, right? The white starfish. You just lay there and think of England. She was on top. She was having a great time. I had my eyes closed. I'm like, no, don't think about anything crazy. And she's up there, and I start hearing this squeak, this hee, hee, hee. And I'm like, what the fuck is that noise? Hee, hee, hee. And I'm thinking, like, listen, we have an IKEA bed, all right? It's a metal IKEA bed, okay? We got to use Allen wrenches to put it together. IKEA beds are good, but never take them to a second location, okay? Because once you take them apart and you put them back, they never fit right again. And I'm thinking, it's the squeaky IKEA bed. No, it's not. It's not the IKEA bed. Different pitch. I listen a little closer. I start hearing, I'm like, maybe it's mice. We have an old house. Mice in the walls. It's mice in the walls, and they're running around, and I listen a little closer. I'm like, no, mice comes with scritching. They're scritching with mices. It's not mice. And then I'm like, I'm like, oh, I know what it is. It's a transphobic murderer about to burst through the door and kill us with an That's what it is. And I'm like, that's insane. Finally, I open my eyes. I'm like, what is that noise? And then my wife, she hadn't stopped. She just points at me and she goes, that's coming from your face. And here's the thing. I was raised like many, many millennial men. The most I know about sex is from porn, okay? I don't know what to do in this situation. No one has ever taught us, what do you do when you wheeze during sex with somebody you love? You know what happens when they do in porn? They shoot the guy and they bring in a different dick. They don't even color match. Just a different dick. So I didn't know what to do. So I looked at her and I just said, baby, 1, 2, no, 1, 2, 2. And this was one of the moments right there I knew I needed to quit because my wife didn't stop. She didn't miss a beat. She just took her hand and she covered my face until she fucking finished. And I thought, this is how I die. Thank you. Thank you. Applaud living. We should do that again. Third reason I had to quit smoking, though, is one day, a couple months after that moment, I was home, and my wife came home from her job, and she ran into the house, and she ran right to the bathroom. And I was like, that's weird. That was very noisy. And then all of a sudden, the door flies open, and she goes, Alex, come here. And I walk in, and there's a test sitting on the counter with a little plus on it. She goes, you know what this means, right? And I said, you have COVID? She said, no, you fucking idiot. You're going to be a dad. And I went, I'm going to be a dad? No. What? Oh, no. So we waited around until we went to the doctor. We got all the checks. And we were like, it's good. It's going to be a baby. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll quit. And then they showed me like pictures of him and everything. I was like, all right, I'm going to quit smoking. And I did. And then things are good. And then what I'm going to tell you about the rest of this set is I'm not going to say my son's name for the rest of this set. And the reason for that is, as the introduction told you, I'm well known on the internet. I'm like a low-level internet celebrity, okay? And for that reason, for our security, I don't say my son's name. I don't show his picture anywhere, but I really don't show his name. You know, one thing is because people get weird on the internet. And the second reason is because my son's name is 30% of my passwords. It's like... You add in the dog, it's like 50%. I don't know the exact number, though. I don't. And most of us don't know the exact number of how often we use the same passwords. Why? Because of the fucking cloud. One day, all of us had the same moment. Oh, I don't need the cloud. I'll just write it down. We all did the same thing. We picked the same password. Every now and then you use exclamation point. Sometimes you use $sign. If it's a really loose website, you can get away with 1%. They don't always let you do that, though. But one day, I was out, I was hammered, I was at a bar, and I needed to check my online banking, and I went to log in, and you know what happened? It was like, you don't know your password. You keep typing it in. And then I had to do forgot password, and it's like, all right, we'll reset it, and I reset it to what I would use as a previous password. It's like, you can't use that again. I was like, fuck you, I told you I was right. And then we got back and forth. And then finally, it was like, well, do you want me to make the password for you? I was like, listen here, bitch. And it's like, no, I'll make the password. I'll make the password for you, my phone said. And then you can hide it behind your thumb. And I said, I don't like that idea because then the cops would cut off my thumb and then steal all my data. And they're like, what data? What data? You're a busboy. I said, fair enough. And then eventually, it went from my thumb to my face. And then eventually, it's just out there in a cloud. And all of my passwords, everything important in my life is right here in my pocket. Probably giving me testicular cancer. Who gives a shit? I don't know, but I'm not going to give RFK that win. 5G. But now, the most important passwords that are my being, my digital being, exist in the cloud somewhere. And what are those passwords? My online banking, my mortgage payments, my health insurance, and my sister's Hulu password. That used to be Netflix. But I also used to be able to remember passwords on my own. I can't, because we had a baby. They don't tell you that. Nobody tells you that. When they tell you, hey, you should have a baby, it'll be so great. You're going to get responsibility. You're going to learn what it's like. You're going to have a deeper view of the future. You're going to learn more about yourself. Fuck all that. You're going to forget goddamn everything. Nobody tells you that, because everyone else fucking forgot it too. I used to remember shit all the time. The other day, I legit looked at my wife and I was like, why? And she goes, I don't know. I asked her, I was like, are we fighting? And she's like, I forgot. My last clear memory is his birth. That was it, because it was a crazy day. It was a C-section, and I didn't know. I had no idea, because again, I'm a guy who went to public school in the suburbs. They didn't show it. They took the girls into a room, and they got one video, and they took me in another room, and they showed us a different video, and then they said, global warming's probably gonna take care of you anyway, so fuck it. And that was it. And then 9/11 happened on the TV. So I just checked off, like 9/11 happened, I'm like, I don't even know what a fucking C-section is. And then my wife's pregnant, and they're like, you gotta go, we're going, it's a C-section. I said, oh shit, here we are. We showed up to the hospital, day of the C-section, right? We show up, and the nurse was super hype, and that scared me. She was like, she had like a little bounce to her, and she was like, oh no, this is great. I usually work on the weekends. I usually only do emergency C-sections. You guys are nice. There's a lot less blood. And I was like, hold up. It is 9:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. And then we're talking, we're going back and forth, and she's like explaining to us like the situation. The doctor comes in, and we start signing forms. We get into different scrubs and all this different stuff. And we're just getting everything together. It's a lot of paperwork, a ton of paperwork. Luigi was right, ton of paperwork, and we're going through it. Edit that out of the YouTube. Okay. But it's a ton of paperwork, and then finally they come back, and they're like, hey, the doctor's like, hey, I have 2 students here. These 2 students, and I'm like, oh, and Mrs. Pearlmania, my wife, she's like, oh, no, that's totally fine. And they're asking, like, can they witness the C-section? And my wife's like, yeah, no, I grew up in Philadelphia. We have so many teaching hospitals. Every time I've ever had anything done, there's been students there. I'm completely comfortable with students being in the room. And then I piped up and said, yes, I am also comfortable. And they all looked at me like, who gives a fuck? And then I'm like, what? So I just keep talking. And I'm like, well, I used to work in a restaurant, and so I've also shadowed servers. So that's important. And they're like, it's not a mozzarella stick. It's a baby. So they take the one, so there's 2 students, 1 male, 1 female, and they take the man, and he leaves, and they leave the lady there. And then we're all getting ready. We're all getting ready, and we're getting our scrubs and everything. And it's awkward now. So I start talking to the student. And I turn to her, and I say, making small talk. I'm like, oh, okay, this has been fun. This is going to be an interesting experience for all of us. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, what college do you go to? She's like, oh, I'm not in college yet. I said, yet? She's like, yeah, I haven't picked one yet. So you haven't picked one yet? She's like, yeah, I'm a junior in high school. I'm like, you're a junior in high school? She's like, yeah. I'm like, and you're about to witness a C-section? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, you're about to be gay. She's like, what? I'm like, listen, let me tell you something. After being in that room, if I was a woman, if I was 17 years old, and you took me into a room, and you had me witness a C-section live, I would shoot any man who came near me. I'd shoot him with a gun. Oh, with his stupid dick, that can happen to me? Do you know what fellas, do you know what fucking happens to them during a C-section? This is what happens. They lay them on the table, they cut them open, and they go, like a fucking, like clowns. Like the fucking handkerchiefs from a clown. And they take all their guts and they put it on a table next to them. Not up, not down, to the side. It's on a fucking metal table, just sitting there. And they're like, ah, baby. And then they just grab everything and go, ah, and they stitch it up. Did you notice during that whole procedure, after the cut, I didn't take a picture? No, they're just willy-nilly putting shit back in there. Is that where a kidney goes? I don't fucking know. But we packed it like the back of a Subaru going to Rehoboth. So I turned to this girl. I said, listen, when you turn 18, get a gun. She's like, what? I'm like, get a gun. Shoot any man that comes near you. In Texas, that's abortion now. So then they take us, right? And they take me down one hallway, they take my wife down another. They're like, Mr. Pearlman, you're gonna go back in here, you're gonna sit. I say, okay, good. I have the phone. They said, what? And I said, well, the doctor told us we had to make a playlist. And that was my job. I have to keep a playlist. Because the whole time during the pregnancy, because we're older, right? And when you're older, when you're over like 35, they keep telling you, this is a geriatric pregnancy. You could die at any moment. You might not even get a baby out of this. You might just be a weird guy on the internet who's a widower now. So they take me, they set me in a room, and so I got the phone, I got an aux cable, I got the Bluetooth pulled up just in case I need to pair it. I got a dongle. You gotta have a dongle for the iPhone 14 because I don't know how I'm hooking in. I don't know. So I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. And they finally, I'm like freaking out. And I'm going through the playlist. I'm trying to figure out which song to play first. I don't know, right? Because my wife and I really worked on this play. We worked hard. Every time we got nervous, we worked on the playlist. We came up with a theme, okay? And finally, we picked the best women we could fucking think of. Dolly Parton, Whitney Houston, Stevie Nicks, Beyonce, Taylor Swift. It's a gaslight gatekeep girl boss for my new son. He's gonna come into this world and he's gonna respect women. Yeah, he happens to be a feminist, but he will not tell people he's a male feminist because I'll be fucked if I'm gonna raise some kid and that's his whole fucking shit. No. You're just gonna treat women like fucking people. You're never gonna make a fucking big deal about it because when you make a big deal about it, we know you're a fucking rapist. Okay, so, all right. So, I'm sitting there, and finally they come to me and like, Mr. Pearlman, it's time for the birth. I said, oh boy. And I walk in, and it's chaos. The doors open in the operating room, and there's like, sit down on the bed, sit down on the stool. And I'm like, ah! And I sit down on the stool. I'm like, I have the dongle. Like, shut the fuck up. Nobody gives a fuck about your dongle. And my wife's looking at me, she's like, your dongle's how I got here. She has a sheet cutting her off right here. I just seen the top of her. And they're pulling on her, and she's looking at me, she's like, I can't feel anything below my nipples. Ah! And she's crying. They hand me a napkin, like, dab her tears. I was like, what the fuck? And I'm holding the whole time the phone. And I'm like, they're like, shut up. And the anesthesiologist has the tarp. Because this is it's like a sheet thing. And they're like, baby's about to come. All right, everybody get your phone ready. Get your phone ready, take a picture. Here comes the baby. And I looked at the anesthesiologist. I said, you leave that fucking tarp up. And she said, why? And I said, I don't want to see it. She doesn't want to see it. And she said, oh, don't be weird. I said, no. You're being the one that's weird. This is your 3,000th C-section. This is my first wife, okay? And we start arguing. Me and the anesthesiologist. My wife is looking at me, and finally she starts crying. And I lean and go, baby, listen. It's going to be okay. Lock in. Look at me in the eyes right now. She looks me in the eyes. I said, I want you to keep me right here. Be in this moment with me. And I want you to remember something. She goes, what? I said, on the other side of that tarp, there's a 17-year-old girl who is gay now. And she starts laughing. She does. And she calms down. And that's when we heard it. That's the exact moment we heard it. We heard as my son was pulled out, pissing and screaming into this world. An arc of piss came over the tarp. It hit us in the face. And we're like, oh my God, it's my boy. That's my fucking boy. forget. The doctor said, and what's his name? And I said, his name is password $123 $. Everything after that was uneventful. No, I'm kidding. It was terrifying. It was the worst. Because after that, you go through a series of being moved from room to room, and then they start showing you things like bills. $48,000 for this kid? What? Luigi, what? Do I gotta hit a brick, get a coin out here to pay this kid? Squish a Goomba? No, They took us to the final room we were gonna stay in, and I'll never forget this because we walk in and I'm looking around. My wife's on a gurney and she's in like the bed, and then I look around. I said, "Where's my bed?" And they said, "Oh, we don't have a bed for you. We have a pull-out chair for support persons." And I said, "A pull-out chair for support persons?" And my face made a thing, and she goes, "All right, well listen, we have to use PC language." I said, "I'm not stuck on the support persons part." I cut her off immediately. I had to. Because I'm like, I understand using the term support persons. Not everybody has a husband. It's not a husband cot, a boyfriend cot, a girlfriend cot, a wife cot. Some people have their mom there. Some people have their fucking next door neighbor. Some people have their aunt. Some people have a coworker. Some people have a 6'4" Klingon who happened to be in the turbo lift during that one episode and is scarred forever whenever he sees Keiko O'Brien, and it's a really good callback during Deep Space Nine. And this joke only works for a very small group of people, and fuck you, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I didn't have a problem with the fact that I was stuck with a chair for support persons. I had a problem with the fact that I'm sleeping on a pull-out chair. Number one, if we pulled out, wouldn't have been in that fucking maternity ward. Number two, a chair? Fuck you. I'm paying $48,000. I stayed. Last night, I was in Washington, D.C., smoking crack with Hunter Biden, okay? $250 a night to stay at a JW Marriott Bonvoy, and I'm here in the American health system paying $48,000, and all you give me is and it sags in the middle. I start cutting promos on people, and they literally go, "All right, we've heard it before," and they just leave. And my wife was laughing so much. She was dying laughing the entire time. And finally, about the fourth or fifth time this happened, I turned to her and I said, "What is so funny?" She goes, "Babe, you are paid to complain. You go on the internet and you bitch. And weird Mormon moms from Utah think it's so funny because they don't understand a Philadelphia Jew with red hair screaming at the Democratic Party to stop fucking texting them as they lose a goddamn election. It doesn't make sense. But here we are, for the first time in your life, where you have a legitimate complaint about a chair that is wrecking your back as the American healthcare system runs rampant on both of us because we couldn't get fucking Bernie, and what is happening? Nobody gives a shit. And this is the ultimate push present. I'm gonna end it with this. A bullet. No, it is the holidays, and I do like to say happy holidays. I do. I prefer saying happy holidays, and the reason for that is because I'm a veteran of the war on Christmas. Thank you. You're welcome. I get 10% off at Denny's. I was a mall security guard in 2009. My job was to drive around the mall and help people whose cars they locked the keys in, or they had a dead battery, or, just having a time. And I drove around one night, and I saw a man standing by a dirty white Ford Explorer, waving me down. I pulled up. I assumed that man's name was Nicholas, because he was wearing a dirty green starter Eagles pullover jacket. He was there with his wife, who I assume her name was Lisa, and 2 kids, who I assume they fucking hate, right? I pull up, I go, "What's the problem?" He goes, "My fucking bitch wife Lisa, she left the fucking keys in the car and locked the door, and the battery was on, so we got a locked car, and I can't fucking even start it. Can you help me?" I was like, "Yeah, I got you." And I got out, I got a Jimmy, and I opened the door, and I got the jumper cables, spent about 20 minutes, jumped the battery, And I turned to him after everything's done. I say, Nick, you good? He goes, yeah, I think we're good. I said, okay. Well, just make sure you drive it for like 20 minutes on the highway, or just park it and let it run for 40 minutes to get a good battery. You might want to check on everything, and then it'll be good after that. He said, okay, thanks. I said, cool. Have yourself a happy holidays. And Nick freezes. He looks at me and goes, what the fuck you say to me? I said, have a happy holidays. And he gets all 5'4" of him, gets real big. And he pokes me in the chest. And he says, you have yourself a Merry Christmas. And I follow that finger up to his little body. And I poke him back in his chest. And I say, oh yeah? Then have a Happy Hanukkah. And then he follows my arm to my nameplate. He sees a Pearlman. A Pearlman. Pearlman. And he goes, oh no. You're a Jew. And I said, yeah, what are we going to do about it? And he reached into his wallet, and he pulled out a 5. And I looked at him, and I said, Nick, you're a fucking anti-Semite. And he reached in his wallet, and he pulled out a 20. And I said, and have a Happy New Year. Thank you for shopping at our mall.